You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is David Smith. He's the senior analyst for the Morgan Report, which you can find online at silver-investor.com. Welcome to the show, David.
Good to be back, Jim. The markets are calm, but I'm excited.
I'm wondering what's happening with gold and silver with the U.S. government semi-shut down. A few more people allowed back to work, but they're still essentially running, not with a complete staff. And what is that doing to economic confidence and also the precious metal markets?
I think it's just a little bit more corrosion to the confidence that people have that the governments in general are willing and able and capable to solve problems or even to address them. And I think this is one more nail in the confidence coffin that's going to continue to draw people to the precious metals and the mining stocks. My feeling about silver, which has been pretty darn quiet lately, and gold too, even though they had a pretty good move yesterday, is I'd like to pose the question, could silver become radioactive? And I think that that's a real possibility, and I'd like to explain what I mean by that, and also talk a little bit about the Silver Summit, which is coming up next week, which for anybody that's interested in silver and gold, that is the place to go in my view. So a few months ago, I was working on an article for a publication, and I ran across a quote by Gene Ahrensberg, who is partially retired now, but he edits a newsletter called the Got Gold Report. And he had noted that earlier this summer that there was what he called massive implied support down to 1850 in silver, and that's where pretty much silver had bottomed during that time period, in the June time period. And, of course, it's since traded above that as high as $25, and now it's around 22. But he made a comment which I thought was pretty fascinating, and it really evoked an image for me. He said, looking at this next chart, please just consider the action in silver as a giant, torturous, bone-crushing, radioactive flag formation, end quote. And if he's correct that silver is in the process of becoming radioactive, and if these lows hold around 1850 or so, we could see, and I've always believed this was going to happen at some point, a virtual price explosion in silver. And I think it could happen without warning. You might see a little bit of a bubbling of the price going up, which people watching, and they'd see it as more trading within a trading range, kind of like building a magma chamber in a volcano. And then at some point, an explosion which catches almost everybody by surprise. And if that's the case, then the fallout is going to be pretty pronounced for the mining stocks, for the price of silver itself, and for investor sentiment. And so I would suggest that it's really important to keep an eye on things, but at the same time, don't be obsessive about it. And the way to go about this, in my view, is to avoid what David Morgan says about what bear market corrections do. They either wear you out or scare you out. And, we've all been pretty worn out over the last 2.5 years, but in my view, it's going to be worth staying the course so that we can reap our just rewards when silver becomes radioactive.
We're chatting with David Smith, the senior analyst for the Morgan Report, chatting gold and silver as usual. I'm wondering, I've heard a quote from Jim Richards where he said basically the fiscal meltdown for the U.S. government could see, in his opinion, he said gold could suddenly double overnight because of this crisis. And he said the U.S. dollar is rapidly losing any value or cachet that it once had.
The dollar is right on the USDX is right on the support area, which just a little below 80, and hard to say if it's going to break through that, but if it does on the downside, it would certainly be negative for the stock market in general and positive for the metals. One of the things that we have to really keep into context here is that if you hold a position, if you have your core position, it's hard to do that right now because we believe that we're right, but if we are, we're going to be right a little bit ahead of time. And so it's important not to get obsessed with your position, not to overtrade. We've talked about a lot of this stuff before. And what I really like to do and what's helped me in my trading is not trying to predict prices, but rather respond to them. And so this is something that is really important. This is what Stu Thompson talks about in his Graceland updates. Buying into your surprise zone. So you don't expect prices to go to a certain level, and then when they do, you have to be ready and able to purchase more shares in the companies that you've already done previous research in. So you line up your ducks, so to speak, and you wait and see if that surprise zone happens, and when everybody else is panicking and throwing out their shares, you pick them up. And so what kind of a surprise might we see? Well, first of all, as you've been discussing, this big shutdown in the U.S. government, this is something that everybody is following, and everybody's kind of frustrated about it and kind of hard to figure things out for all of us. But that is, the net effect of that is to cause an increase in a lack of confidence in governmental bodies in general, not just in the United States, but really around the world. And so that confidence, that lack of confidence, has more and more people questioning whether they should be holding their money in U.S. dollars or whether some of it should go into mining stocks or the metals. Then there's another surprise, which is kind of what a wag called a known unknown, and that is Mexico is proposing a 5 to 7% tax increase on mining operations. I've been talking about this now for a couple of months, and a lot of people that are listening to this are aware of that talk going around, and where that'll settle is anybody's guess. The current thinking is it'll be around 5%, which is a pretty substantial hit. And if that happens, which could be announced, say, sometime in November, there could be a sell-off in metals stocks across the board in Mexico. And that, in my view, would be a great opportunity for people to add more shares to the companies that they've done research on that they know are going to be around. The stronger companies will definitely survive this. The weaker ones are going to have more trouble, and there's some exploration projects which may not even get off the ground because of it. So there's a real opportunity when you have this, if you have this kind of a surprise zone price, to be able to take action.
I know for some metals, I'm thinking zinc in particular, the biggest producers are going to be shutting down in the next few years, and there are no big projects lined up. What about silver?
Well, of course, in a lot of companies, zinc and lead are byproducts of silver production. In fact, we know most silver is produced as a byproduct of base metals production. But the companies in Mexico, most of them are primary silver producers, which is relatively rare. And so this is going to affect all the metals in their own unique way. And I was looking at platinum this morning and palladium, and they're forming an interesting formation, and I believe for almost 2 years that they'll be the ones that'll first move on their own metrics, followed by gold and silver on their own specific metrics, some of which are common to all the metals and some of which are specific to those metals. And you know, Jim, while we're talking today, this is really a pretty timely talk we're having because next week, October 24th and 25th will be the 11th annual Silver Summit in Spokane, Washington at the Davenport Hotel. And I know many of our listeners, or a fair number, are Canadians, and you know it's not that difficult for you to get down there. There's a very strong Canadian contingent that shows up there every year, not only in terms of the speakers, but also the audience as well. And I love that conference, and I'll tell you, I think that if you could get down there, you really should try to make it. David Morgan always speaks there, and the Morgan Report team interviews a number of the main companies, the principals that are there, and these videos will end up soon thereafter on the website, on the Silver-Investor website for Morgan Report subscribers. It's the place for people to go to really collect information about the silver story and to be able to speak with directly and listen in the audience format some of the biggest and most successful names in primary silver production.
It's really too bad the latest Lone Ranger movie wasn't a hit. It would have promoted silver a lot too.
Possibly so, but I'll tell you, it's going to be exciting. I'm going to be looking forward to being there, and the next time we speak, I will have returned from another trip to Mexico looking at the silver property. I just think that this is an exciting time. I know it's frustrating for people, and a lot of people have given up, but if you kind of check back with your own premise, and if you believe what we feel, that this market has a lot farther to run on the upside, and at some point it will break out, and when it does, it'll surprise a lot of people. But keep doing your own research, look at the companies that you feel are good ones, and see how that fits, or if it fits into your investment profile, and if it does, you got to be willing to pay the price and take a position and hold on to it.
Thanks a lot for chatting with us, David.
It's been great. I look forward to speaking with you again, Jim.
My guest has been David Smith, the senior analyst for the Morgan Report. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. You can contact us with any questions or comments at info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.